The best way to survive in the mercenary business was knowing which contracts to refuse. The Telvanni broker across from him chittered nervously, his mantis-like appendages clicking against the data tablet. Triple rate, he repeated, compound eyes reflecting the neon glow of the bar signs. The syndicate is offering triple your standard fee. Dravik took a long pull from his drink, the bioluminescent liquid casting blue shadows across his forearms. Around them, the usual collection of guns for hire pretended not to listen while hanging on every word. The fringe station cantina had gone quiet enough to hear the recyclers humming in the walls. "Let me guess," Dravik said, setting his glass down with deliberate care. "Humans." The broker's antennae drooped. Earth's 22nd Reconnaissance Battalion has been interfering with expansion operations in the Cygnus Arm. The Syndicate requires their removal. A massive Gordanian at the next table laughed, the sound like rocks grinding together. This was Thrax, who once solo-hunted a colonial drake through an asteroid field. The same Thrax now shaking his boulder of a head. "Not for 10 times triple," Dravik gestured at the departing mercenary. "You see, even Thrax knows better, and he once ate a fusion grenade on a bet." "The payment would be sufficient to retire comfortably," the broker pressed, mandibles working overtime. "Can't spend credits when you're dead." Dravik leaned back, 3 of his hands folded while the 4th reached for his drink. "I'll tell you what happened the last time someone paid me to deal with human military. Not special forces, mind you, just regular Earth Marines. Should have been simple." The cantina had gone completely silent now. Even the bartender, a gelatinous Quellan, had stopped cleaning glasses. "This was maybe 8 cycles back," Dravik began. "I was running point for a privateering operation in the Tannhäuser Belt. The Directorate wanted some mining stations cleared out, and intelligence said they were defended by maybe 30 Marines. Standard weapons, nothing fancy. Easy money," a young Saurian mercenary with pristine scales scoffed. 30 Marines against a professional team, that's barely a warm-up." Dravik fixed him with a look. "You have scales so new they squeak, hatchling. Sit down and learn something." The Saurian's scales flushed purple, but he shut up. "First 3 stations went exactly as planned," Dravik continued. "Professional surrenders, no casualties, everyone walks away. We were feeling good, cocky even. Then we hit waypoint 7. He paused for another drink, letting the tension build. An old Kryn veteran leaned forward, his cybernetic eye whirring. The approach looked perfect. No alarms, no defensive scramble, station systems all nominal. We docked, cut through the airlock, swept the primary corridor. Empty. Not just defenseless, completely abandoned. Food still warm in the mess hall, consoles still active, like everyone had just evaporated. "Ghost station protocol," the broker suggested. "Planned evacuation." "That's what I thought." Dravik's expression darkened. "Until my point man disappeared. 1 second he was walking ahead of us. Next second gone. No sound, no struggle. Just empty corridor." The young Saurian opened his mouth, but a glare from the Kryn veteran silenced him. "We went defensive, activated our thermals, our motion sensors, everything. Couldn't detect anything. Then my second went down. Then my third. In less than 90 seconds, I'd lost 3 team members to nothing." Dravik held up his hands, counting on his fingers. "That's when we heard it. Laughter, human laughter, echoing through the vents. Then a voice on the PA system, calm as anything. 'Gentlemen, you're trespassing on Earth territory. You have 30 seconds to surrender.'" "What did you do?" The broker leaned forward despite himself. "What do you think? We opened fire. Plasma, armor-piercing, high explosive, everything we had. Put enough holes in that station to make it look like a training target. When the smoke cleared, we figured anything in there was dead." Dravik's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Then the gravity shut off. The cantina crowd collectively leaned in. They'd had control of station systems the whole time. And in zero-G, with emergency lighting and smoke everywhere, we were blind. That's when they came for us. He made a quick, snatching motion. First Marine came up through a maintenance panel we didn't even know existed. Disarmed my weapons specialist with his bare hands, used his own momentum against him. Second one dropped from the ceiling, right into our formation with some kind of shock stick. 3 of my team down before they could react. "And you," the young Saurian asked, fully invested now. I panicked, fired wildly until my gun overheated. Then I felt someone tap my shoulder. Every mercenary in the cantina was frozen. I turned around expecting to die and found myself face to face with a human. Average height, nothing special, just floating there in zero-G with this pleasant smile. No visible weapons. He actually reached out to steady me as I flailed around, then said, "Easy there, friend. First time in zero-G can be rough on the inner ear. Mind if I take that before you hurt yourself?" And he just took my sidearm like he was helping a drunk put away a bottle. Dravik shook his head at the memory. The worst part wasn't that they beat us, it's that they made it look easy, like we were just an inconvenience, some paperwork to file. How many were there? The broker asked, voice hushed. That's the thing, we never got a confirmed count. After-action analysis suggested no more than 4. 4 humans against my squad of 17. Your missing team members. Found them all secured in a storage locker, unharmed. The humans had been picking us off one by one from the moment we boarded. The entire operation had been compromised from the start. Dravik drained his glass. The Directorate classified the whole incident, pulled us out of the system. Couldn't admit their elite mercenary force got handled by a handful of Marines. He turned back to the broker. So no, I won't take a contract against human special forces. Not after what I experienced with their regular forces. Not for triple rate. Not for a planetary governor's ransom. The Syndicate will be displeased. The Syndicate can kiss all 4 of my appendages. If they're smart, they'll find a diplomatic solution. Because if Earth's 22nd is involved, they already know about this little recruitment drive. As if summoned by prophecy, the cantina door hissed open. Conversations died as a lone human walked in, wearing nondescript civilian clothing that screamed military to anyone with functioning eyes. The human surveyed the room with casual interest, then walked directly to the bar. "Whiskey," he told the bartender. "Neat, if you got it." Dravik felt something cold crawl up his spine. The human's gaze swept across the cantina, pausing briefly on him, and Dravik could have sworn he saw recognition followed by the ghost of a smile. He was halfway to the exit before the broker could protest. "You can't just leave me with an impossible contract." "Watch me." Dravik didn't slow down. "If you're smart, you'll be right behind me." He made it exactly 3 steps outside before a hand caught his upper right shoulder. "Leaving so soon?" The voice was conversational, almost friendly. Dravik froze, every survival instinct screaming. "How did you get out here before me?" "Service exit, basic tactics." The human moved around to face him. Up close, Dravik could see he was middle-aged by their standards, with weathered skin and eyes that catalogued everything. "Relax. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't have seen me coming." "Who are you?" "Name's Patterson." "Commander Patterson." He released Dravik's shoulder. "That was quite the story you told in there. Pretty accurate, actually, though you left out the part where you tried to bribe my Marines with Directorate bonds." Dravik's secondary heart skipped. "You were at Waypoint 7. I was the one who took your sidearm. You had good trigger discipline, professional work." A peculiar cocktail of terror and indignation swirled through Dravik. "What do you want?" "I already refused the contract." "About that contract." Patterson leaned against the station bulkhead. "We need information. The Syndicate isn't usually this direct. Something's changed, and we'd like to know what." Dravik considered his options. Running would end badly. Fighting would end worse. Cooperation seemed the only path with a survival probability above 0. "Not here," he finally said. "Too many eyes." Patterson nodded. "My transport's in Bay 31. Let's talk there." "You expect me to voluntarily board a human military vessel?" "I expect you to be smart enough to recognize that being seen cooperating with the 22nd is your best survival strategy. Because whoever takes that contract will fail, and then the Syndicate will need someone to blame for their intelligence leak." The logic was frustratingly sound. "Lead the way." Bay 31 contained what appeared to be a standard civilian transport. Dravik knew better than to trust appearances with human military hardware. As they approached, the entry ramp descended to reveal another human, female, with short dark hair and the same predatory awareness as Patterson. "This is Major Huang," Patterson introduced. "My second." Huang nodded curtly, her assessment of Dravik clinical and thorough. Inside, the transport had been converted into a mobile command center. 3 more humans were present, all in civilian clothes, all carrying themselves like coiled springs. "Meet the team," Patterson said casually. "Sergeant Ortega, Communications. Lieutenant Rivera, Technical. And that's Brooks." "He doesn't talk much." Dravik folded all 4 arms defensively. "Fascinating. Now explain why I shouldn't be terrified." Patterson gestured to a seat designed for non-human physiology. "Let's talk about the Syndicate, their activities in the Cygnus arm, and why they suddenly want the 22nd eliminated. What makes you think I know anything beyond what the broker told me?" "Because you're Dravik Thresh," Rivera said, tapping a data pad. "Former tactical advisor to Directorate Expansion Forces. Current independent contractor specializing in security assessment. You've worked with the Syndicate on 5 previous operations, most recently on Proxima Reach." Dravik wasn't surprised, but remained unsettled. "You've been monitoring me." "We monitor potential threats," Huang clarified. "Your name appears in interesting contexts." Patterson brought up a holographic display of the Cygnus arm. "The Syndicate is planning something big. Something worth risking conflict with Earth. We need to know what." Dravik studied the map, recognizing several systems. "If I tell you what I know, what guarantee do I have that I walk out of here?" "The same guarantee you had walking in," Patterson shrugged. "None, but consider the alternatives. You help us, we prevent a potential incident, and you disappear with your reputation intact. And option 2, we drop you at the nearest Directorate outpost with detailed records of your freelance work since leaving their service." Rivera's voice was pleasant. "They'd find that interesting given their strict policy on former advisors selling secrets." The Directorate's preferred execution method involved molecular disassembly. Slowly. "You make a compelling argument," Dravik conceded. "The Syndicate found something in the Cygnus arm, something big enough to risk provoking Earth." He leaned forward. "Have you heard of the Echani?" The humans exchanged quick glances. Ortega's hand moved subtly toward a concealed weapon. "Ancient technology," Patterson said carefully, "supposedly capable of manipulating quantum states." "Not supposedly. Actually," Dravik spread his hands. "The Syndicate found a functional Echani gateway on Minerva Prime. They've been excavating it secretly for 3 cycles." Rivera whistled low. "That would explain the resource shipments we've been tracking." "What does this Echani technology do?" Huang demanded. "Specifics are above my clearance, but it relates to quantum entanglement on a massive scale. The Syndicate believes it could enable instantaneous transportation across infinite distances, no ships required. A galactic portal network," Patterson mused. "Whoever controls that controls everything. Trade routes, military deployment, colonization," Dravik finished. "The Syndicate would leapfrog every power in the galaxy, including Earth." Brooks finally spoke, his voice surprisingly soft. "This explains the energy signatures at Minerva Prime. Your unit has been monitoring the system," Dravik realized. "That's why the Syndicate wants you eliminated. You're too close." Patterson nodded grimly. "We've had suspicions for months." "The Syndicate doesn't understand what they're dealing with," Dravik continued, finding himself unexpectedly concerned. "Echani technology is notoriously unstable. The gateway isn't just a tool, it's sentient in ways we barely comprehend." "Sentient technology," Ortega sounded skeptical. "The Echani didn't distinguish between organic and synthetic intelligence. Their technology grows, adapts, learns. The Syndicate thinks they can control it, but they're deluding themselves. If they activate the gateway without proper safeguards, the resulting cascade could tear apart spacetime across multiple sectors." "How close are they to activation?" Wong asked sharply. "Based on intercepted communications. 2 weeks, maybe less." The human team exchanged grim looks. "We need to move quickly," Patterson decided. "Dravik, what kind of security are we looking at?" Dravik laughed without humor. "The kind that makes direct assault suicide. Orbital defense platforms, automated response systems, at least 300 combat personnel, and shields derived from Echani designs." "So a typical Tuesday," Rivera quipped, earning sharp looks from both Patterson and Huang. There might be another way, Dravik suggested reluctantly. I know their security protocols. With the right approach, a small team could potentially infiltrate. You're volunteering? Patterson asked, openly suspicious. I'm volunteering to save my own skin. If the gateway activates improperly, or if Earth and the Syndicate go to war over it, my prospects look bleak. Patterson turned to his team. Thoughts could be a trap, Ortega said immediately. Definitely a trap, Huang agreed, but his information checks out. The energy readings corroborate his story, Brooks added quietly. We need more intelligence, Rivera noted. But time is critical, Patterson considered, then turned back to Dravik. You realize what you're proposing. Helping Earth forces against the Syndicate would make you a marked entity throughout the galaxy. I'm already marked after refusing that contract, Dravik sighed. Besides, there's a saying among my people, better to swim with predators than drown alone. Poetic. Patterson's expression held a hint of amusement. All right, provisional cooperation. You help us infiltrate, we help ensure your continued existence afterward. Though I feel compelled to point out I'm violating approximately 20 different confidentiality agreements. Your ethical concerns are noted, Huang said dryly. The next 70 hours were a blur of intense preparation. Dravik found himself grudgingly impressed by the human team's efficiency. They absorbed his knowledge, combined it with their own intelligence, and developed an infiltration plan that was either brilliant or suicidal. Probably both. The plan hinged on Dravik's access credentials, which hadn't been revoked in Syndicate systems. He would pose as a security consultant bringing specialized equipment to reinforce the gateway complex. This will never work, Dravik declared as they approached Minerva Prime. The gas giant dominated the viewport, its third moon barely visible. Probably not, Patterson agreed, checking his equipment. But they're arrogant. They believe their security is impenetrable. Besides, Huang added, we've masked our approach signature to match a supply delivery. By the time they realize something's wrong, we'll be inside. The approach went suspiciously smoothly. Their forged codes were accepted, and they were directed to a secondary cargo bay with minimal personnel. See, Rivera grinned. Smooth. Touched and complete, Ortega reported. Looping their surveillance feeds now. Patterson nodded to Dravik. You're up. Remember, act natural. Natural, Dravik thought, while smuggling 5 human special forces operatives into a top-secret facility. Perfectly natural. The cargo ramp lowered. 2 bored Telvanni guards barely glanced at his identification. Security consultant, one noted. Not scheduled. Emergency assessment, Dravik explained smoothly. Direct request from Director Valen. The activation timeline has been accelerated. The guards exchanged glances. We weren't informed. Hence the emergency part. Dravik let irritation seep into his voice. Would you prefer I inform the director his security priorities were delayed because you needed formal notification? The guards immediately stepped aside. Proceed to Section 9. Back at the ship, the team was already moving. We're clear, Dravik said, but they're tracking the equipment. We have maybe 6 minutes before they realize something's wrong. 6 minutes is generous, Patterson remarked, shouldering a pack. They moved through the facility with practiced efficiency, using Dravik's guidance to avoid major checkpoints. The Echani complex was massive, extending deep into the moon's crust. Central control should be through here, Dravik indicated a reinforced door. Rivera began bypassing the security systems. Any final words of wisdom? Patterson asked quietly. Yes, Dravik replied grimly. If the gateway goes critical, don't bother running. Death will be instantaneous across at least 5 light years. Comforting, Huang muttered. The door slid open silently, revealing not the expected control room, but a massive chamber dominated by a swirling vortex of energy suspended within a crystalline field. Pulsating tendrils of blue-white light reached outward, probing the boundaries. This isn't the control room, Dravik whispered, horror dawning. This is the gateway. They've already begun activation. Around the chamber stood at least 30 Syndicate scientists and security personnel, all now turning toward the intruders. At their center stood Director Valen himself, an elegant Telvanni with calculating compound eyes. Dravik Thresh, Valen's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. How predictable. The moment you refused our contract, I knew you would seek out the humans. He gestured expansively. Welcome to the Echani Gateway, Earth forces. You're just in time to witness the dawn of a new galactic order. The containment field is destabilizing, Brooks observed quietly, eyeing his scanner. Energy levels are cascading. A minor calibration issue, Valen dismissed. You're wrong, Dravik insisted, genuine fear in his voice. The energy signature is self-sustaining. You've lost control. As if confirming his assessment, a tendril of energy punched through the field, vaporizing a nearby console and its operator. Chaos erupted. Security forces opened fire. The human team responded. Scientists scrambled for exits. Through it all, the gateway pulsed with increasing intensity, more tendrils breaking through the weakening containment. We need to shut it down, Patterson shouted, taking cover behind an overturned station. The primary controls are there. Dravik pointed to a raised platform where Valen frantically worked a console. But simple shutdown won't work now. The reaction is self-sustaining. Huang fired a precise burst that dropped 2 guards. Options? There's a quantum dampening protocol. Last resort, it would collapse the core's energy matrix. But, Patterson demanded, someone would need to manually activate it from the primary console. The failsafe prevents remote triggering. Patterson and Huang exchanged looks. Cover me, Patterson decided. I'll reach the console. You won't know how to initiate the protocol, Dravik objected. Then you're coming with me. Patterson grabbed Dravik's upper arm. Team, suppressing fire. The operatives moved with coordinated precision as Patterson and Dravik made a desperate dash toward the platform. Energy bolts sizzled past. One clipped Dravik's lower left arm, sending pain lancing through his nervous system. They reached the platform to find Valen slumped over the console, victim of the chaotic crossfire. System is rejecting shutdown commands, Dravik reported, his injured arm hanging useless as he worked with his remaining 3. The gateway is fighting back. It's what? Patterson looked incredulous. I told you it's sentient, Dravik snapped, and it doesn't want to die. The containment field was visibly failing, sections collapsing as the vortex expanded. Throughout the chamber, both humans and syndicate forces abandoned the fight in favor of evacuation. The dampening protocol, Patterson reminded him. Now or never, Dravik input a complex sequence, his fingers flying across alien symbols. There's a problem. The protocol requires activation from 2 stations. This one and that one. He pointed across the chamber to a secondary console, now surrounded by lethal energy tendrils. Patterson assessed the situation with cold efficiency. How long once initiated? 20 seconds to complete energy dispersal. Maybe less. Enough time to reach the exit. Dravik shook his head. Not even close. Patterson activated his comm. Team, evacuate immediately. Get to minimum safe distance. That's an order. The sounds of protest were cut short as Patterson removed his comm unit and crushed it underfoot. You're staying? Dravik asked, surprised despite himself. Someone has to reach that second console, Patterson said simply. You activate from here on my mark, then get out. That's suicide, Dravik stated bluntly. Probably, Patterson grinned suddenly. But it's either that or watch half the system get torn apart. Besides, humans have a saying. No plan survives first contact. Your species is insane, Dravik declared, but found himself oddly moved. Patterson checked his weapon. Ready when you are. Dravik positioned his 3 functioning hands over the activation sequence. On your mark. With a nod, Patterson sprinted toward the secondary console, diving and rolling through gaps in the energy tendrils with impossible agility. Twice, he narrowly avoided vaporization, his suit smoking from near misses. Against all probability, he reached the console. Now, Patterson shouted across the chamber. Dravik initiated the sequence, watching Patterson do the same. The gateway seemed to sense their intention, energy tendrils whipping into a frenzy. Protocol initiated, Dravik confirmed. 18 seconds to dispersal. Go, Patterson commanded. Get out while you can. Dravik hesitated only a moment before racing toward the exit. Behind him, he could see Patterson holding position at the console. ensuring the protocol completed despite energy tendrils closing in from all sides. He reached the landing bay just as Huang was preparing to seal the ship. "Patterson," she demanded as Dravik stumbled aboard. Staying behind to complete the protocol, Dravik explained between gasping breaths. His choice. Huang's expression hardened, but she gave the order to launch. Their ship had barely cleared the facility when the moon behind them seemed to ripple, as if reality itself briefly reconsidered. Then a shockwave of dispersing energy washed over them, powerful enough to send their ship tumbling despite maximum thrust. Energy readings returning to normal, Brooks reported quietly. The gateway has been neutralized. The silence that followed was profound. Why would he do that? Dravik finally asked. Sacrifice himself for a mission, for people who aren't even his species. Huang regarded him with an unreadable expression. That's what makes human special forces different, Dravik. We complete the mission, whatever it takes. Is that why mercenaries won't take contracts against you? Because you're willing to die? No, Huang corrected. It's because we're willing to live for something bigger than ourselves. That's what makes us dangerous in ways most species can't comprehend. As their ship accelerated away from Minerva Prime, Dravik contemplated her words. He thought about Patterson's final moments, not panic or fear, but calm acceptance of necessary sacrifice. Perhaps that was the true reason mercenaries refused contracts against human special forces. Not their tactics, not their technology, not even their unpredictability. It was their conviction, the absolute certainty that gave them an edge no amount of training or equipment could provide. 3 weeks later, Dravik sat in the same cantina, nursing the same drink, when the door hissed open. Commander Patterson walked in, looking slightly singed but very much alive, and headed straight for the bar. Dravik stared. "You're dead. I watched you die." Patterson turned, whiskey in hand, and grinned. The protocol dispersed the energy outward. I just had to wait in the one spot it wasn't going. He raised his glass. Humans have another saying, if you can't be smart, at least be thorough. Dravik felt several contradictory emotions simultaneously. You let me think you were dead. Seemed tactically sound at the time. Besides, you told one hell of a story about refusing that contract. The syndicate bought it completely. Patterson sat down across from him. We could use someone with your skills. Earth pays well, and we have excellent life insurance. You want me to work for human special forces? Why not? You already risked your life for us once. Dravik considered this. He thought about the conviction, the certainty, the absolute commitment to something larger than survival. Fine, he said finally. But I'm keeping all 4 of my appendages, and I expect hazard pay. Patterson laughed. Deal. Welcome to the 22nd Reconnaissance Battalion. Dravik raised his glass. This is either the smartest or stupidest decision I've ever made. With us, Patterson clinked glasses. It's usually both. Dravik stared at Patterson for a long moment, processing the implications of what he just agreed to. Working with humans was one thing, working for them was something else entirely. So what happens now? Dravik asked, setting his glass down. Do I sign something in blood, swear an oath? You humans have all those dramatic rituals. Patterson chuckled and pulled out a small data pad. Nothing that theatrical, just some paperwork, background verification, the usual bureaucratic nonsense. He slid the pad across the table. Read through it, take your time, though I should mention the signing bonus is quite generous. Dravik scanned through the document with 2 eyes while his other 2 kept watch on the cantina. Old habits. The contract was surprisingly straightforward. None of the usual corporate loopholes or indentured servitude clauses common in mercenary work. Earth apparently preferred their agreements clear and binding. This says I be operating under Earth jurisdiction, Dravik noted. That means if I mess up, I face Earth justice, not galactic arbitration. You planning to mess up? I plan for every contingency. Good, Patterson leaned back in his chair. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. Earth justice is strict but fair. You follow the rules of engagement, you complete your assignments professionally, and you'll never have a problem. We take care of our people, Dravik. Even the ones with 4 arms. Dravik's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his species. What kind of work are we talking about? I assume you're not recruiting me for my sparkling personality. Security assessment, threat analysis, infiltration planning. The same skills you've been using freelance, except now you'd be using them for a government that actually keeps its word. Patterson finished his whiskey. The 22nd operates in the grey zones, places where official military presence would cause diplomatic incidents. We need people who understand how the underworld operates. A sanctioned criminal. A specialized consultant, Patterson corrected. There's a difference. You'd be working within legal frameworks, just flexible ones. The cantina door opened again, and Huang walked in with Brooks. They spotted Patterson immediately and made their way over. Huang's eyes narrowed when she saw Dravik still sitting there. He's joining up, Patterson explained before she could ask. Huang's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. Less hostile, more calculating. You're serious about this? I'm serious about not getting vaporized by unstable alien technology, Dravik replied. And apparently that means working with the people who know how to handle it. Brooks pulled up a chair, his quiet presence somehow more unnerving than Huang's direct scrutiny. You held position at the gateway console for 11 seconds after Patterson gave the evacuation order. We reviewed the facility footage that survived. You could have run immediately, but you made sure the protocol was properly initialized first. Dravik hadn't realized they'd been watching that closely. Seemed like a waste to let Patterson die for nothing. That kind of thinking is why we want you, Huang said. The 22nd doesn't just need skills. We need people who understand that the mission comes first, but the team is what makes the mission possible. Pretty words, Dravik muttered. What's the catch? The catch is that once you're in, Patterson said seriously. Earth doesn't play games with divided loyalties. You work for us, you can't take side contracts, you can't sell information, and you definitely can't go back to working with the Syndicate or anyone else. Your mercenary days are over. And if I want out later, honorable discharge after your contract term, full benefits, and a glowing recommendation. Patterson's expression hardened slightly. But if you betray us, if you compromise operations or endanger the team, Earth has a very long memory and a very comprehensive justice system. We're offering you a place with us, Dravik, not a temporary alliance. The weight of the decision pressed down on Dravik. He'd spent the last 15 cycles operating independently, trusting no one, surviving on his wits and his willingness to walk away from bad situations. Joining Earth's military meant surrendering that independence, binding himself to their rules and their wars. But it also meant having backup, having resources, having people who wouldn't abandon him when things went sideways. He thought about Patterson staying behind at that console, calm and certain even facing death. He thought about Huang's team executing their infiltration with precision and trust. He thought about how they treated him not as an expendable asset, but as someone whose knowledge and skills had value. The signing bonus, Dravik said finally. How generous are we talking? Rivera materialized at the table with a fresh drink for everyone and a data pad of her own. Enough to clear whatever debts you're carrying and set up a secure account in neutral space. Plus full medical coverage, which given your line of work, you're going to need. Full medical. Even for non-human physiology. Earth has some of the best xenobiology specialists in the galaxy, Rivera said. We take care of our people, all of them. Ortega joined the growing crowd at the table, carrying what looked like official Earth documentation. I pulled your background file. You've got 17 outstanding warrants in syndicate space, 9 in collective territories, and at least 30 unpaid bounties from various corporations. Earth can make all of that disappear. Dravik's 4 eyes widened. You can do that. Diplomatic immunity is a wonderful thing, Patterson said with a slight smile. The moment you sign that contract, you become an Earth asset under official protection. Anyone coming after you has to go through us first. And people don't go through you, Dravik said slowly, understanding dawning. Not successfully, Huang confirmed. Dravik picked up the stylus and held it over the data pad. His hand trembled slightly, all 4 of them. This wasn't just a contract. This was a complete life change. No more independence. No more playing all sides. No more running when things got complicated. But also no more loneliness. No more wondering if the next contract would be his last. No more looking over his shoulder constantly, waiting for old enemies to catch up with him. One more question, Dravik said, stylus still hovering. What happened to the syndicate after we destroyed the gateway? Patterson's expression went cold. The installation on Minerva Prime was their only functional Echani site. Without it, their expansion plans collapsed. The syndicate fragmented into competing factions within 2 weeks. Director Valen was found guilty of gross negligence by his own board and exiled to the fringe. The organization still exists, but they're no longer a major threat. So we actually prevented a war. We prevented something worse than a war, Brooks said quietly. We prevented the galaxy from being reshaped by people who didn't understand what they were playing with. Dravik thought about that. Thought about the swirling vortex of energy, the reality-bending power of the Echani gateway, and how close they'd come to catastrophe. He thought about Patterson running through those energy tendrils, not because he had to, but because it was the right thing to do. He signed the contract. Patterson extended his hand across the table, and Dravik gripped it with his upper right hand, the traditional human gesture feeling strange but somehow appropriate. "Welcome to the 22nd Reconnaissance Battalion," Patterson said. "Try not to get yourself killed in the first month." "No promises," Dravik replied. Huang actually smiled, a rare occurrence. "We ship out in 6 hours. That gives you time to settle any personal business and pack whatever you're bringing. Travel light. We move fast." "I always travel light," Dravik said, realizing he'd just committed to something completely insane. The team stood up, preparing to leave. Rivera clapped Dravik on the shoulder with surprising strength for someone half his size. "Fair warning, Patterson's idea of training exercises involves live ammunition and aggressive deadlines. And Huang's idea of team building involves zero-gravity combat drills at Odark 30, Ortega added with a grin. "Sounds terrible," Dravik said. "It absolutely is," Patterson confirmed cheerfully. "But you'll be too busy to worry about old enemies, and you'll sleep better knowing you're actually making a difference instead of just surviving day to day." As the team filtered out of the cantina, leaving Dravik alone with his thoughts and his signed contract, he realized Patterson was right. For the first time in 15 cycles, he felt something other than paranoia and cynicism. He felt purpose. The Telvanni broker from earlier approached cautiously, mandibles twitching nervously. "I saw you talking with the humans. Should I be concerned?" Dravik finished his drink and stood up, all four arms stretching as he prepared to leave this life behind. "Extremely concerned. Tell the syndicate that Dravik Thresh is off the market permanently. They won't be happy. They can file a complaint with Earth's 22nd Reconnaissance Battalion." Dravik headed toward the exit, then paused and looked back. "Actually, please do file that complaint. I'd love to see their faces when they realize where I ended up." 6 hours later, Dravik stood in the cargo bay of an Earth transport ship, his meager possessions secured in a locker marked with his new identification number. Patterson walked past, noticed him standing there, and paused. "Second thoughts. Just wondering if this is the smartest decision I've ever made or the stupidest." Patterson grinned and kept walking. "Like I said before, with us it's usually both. Get some rest, Dravik. Tomorrow we start teaching you how humans really operate." As the ship's engines hummed to life and they accelerated away from the station, Dravik strapped into his assigned seat and realized he was surrounded by the same team that had infiltrated an impossible facility, destroyed a reality-bending weapon, and somehow convinced a cynical mercenary that working for something larger than himself wasn't just propaganda. Maybe humans were insane, but at least now he was insane right along with them, and somehow that felt exactly right.